Hi and welcome back. My name is Gonzalo Artiach and I'm a healthcare equity analyst here at ABG. Our next company is IRLAB, a Swedish biotech focused on the development of novel pharmacological treatments for neurological diseases. With us, we have here today Richard Godfrey, the CEO. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. It's actually this afternoon. So yes, my name is Richard Godfrey. I'm the CEO of IRLAB, and we're focused on transforming the lives of patients living with Parkinson's disease. Next slide, please. If I could draw your attention to our disclaimer and any forward-looking statements that we might make in this presentation. Next slide, please. So IRLAB is a biotech company really founded on pioneering biology with a deep and profound understanding of Parkinson's disease and the biology behind that, really underscored by the research of Nobel Prize winner laureate Professor Arvid Carlsson, and subsequently our profound platform discovery technology called ISP. Today, we have a focused strategy on treating patients with Parkinson's disease throughout their disease journey, and have the potential for a blockbuster business. We believe our technology, our clinical data, and our business proposition is validated by a commercial license with Ipsen to forward develop and commercialize one of our assets. Today, we have 4 unique unencumbered assets that are poised for blockbuster potential themselves. And as an organization, we are experienced, we have a strong cash position and listed on the Stockholm NASDAQ. Next slide, please. So after many years of R&D, we now have 4 drug candidates that are poised for significant value inflection. We've taken the opportunity to strengthen our leadership team so that I can focus on strategy, on commercial development, on investor relations and fundraising, and Nicholas can prioritize the delivery of our R&D promises. We have a number of high inflection points on the horizon for multiple assets, and I'll talk about these in a few moments. Next slide, please. So what is Parkinson's disease? Well, it continues to be a very common and debilitating disease. More than 9 million patients, a $25 billion market as it stands today, and poised to double over the next decade or so. It's a chronic and progressive disease with no cure, and it's caused by neurodegeneration, by a loss of brain cells that otherwise would produce dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that has a central role in how the body and the brain regulates, controls movement. The standard of care drug, which has been around for 50 years or more, and there's been no successful developments upon that, is a drug called levodopa. It has some limitations and complications. It has to be taken 6, 8, 10 times a day. And these complications also affect the motor function. So about 1/3 of the patients have what's known as levodopa-induced dyskinesia, and about half the patients have increased fall frequency and reduced balance. It really is quite a debilitating disease. Next slide, please. So this first symptom that we'll look to address, the so-called levodopa-induced dyskinesia, is to be targeted with mesdopetam. This is our lead program. In order to understand this, we need to understand the patient's day, the Parkinson's patient's day. They'll wake up in the morning typically with stiffness, inability to move, and very slow motion. They want to move, but their brain just can't make the body function. Levodopa alleviates this off period, with so-called on period, and that on period of time indicated here in red, it can be as much as 6, 8, maybe even 10 hours. But as the disease progresses, the on period is hampered by the occurrence of dyskinesia, involuntary movement. This is the so-called bad on. Mesdopetam is designed to increase the good on, increase the red zone, and reduce the bad on time. We estimate there's more than 1 million patients worldwide that are suffering with Parkinson's disease, levodopa-induced dyskinesias. Next slide, please. Oh, here we can see the increased red. Thank you. Next slide. Paripamat is our second asset, currently also in phase 2b study. It's designed to improve balance and reduce falls frequency. Nearly 2 million people worldwide here. And we estimate that besides being terribly difficult for patients who have fear of falling and also for their caregivers, the cost of treatment for a fall injury for a patient over 65 is probably around $30,000. So there's severe costs here for the healthcare systems. And I'll talk a little bit more about our development program for Paripamat in a few minutes. Next slide, please. But this is just part of the patient journey that at IRLAB we have a very, very good understanding of. Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disease, and people living with Parkinson's suffer for 20 years or more. At diagnosis, they might be prescribed with levodopa. Our 003 program is designed to be a levodopa replacement without the troublesome complications. As I mentioned earlier, after maybe 3, 5, 7 years, this so-called levodopa-induced dyskinesias start to become quite troublesome. This is where mesdopetam has benefit. And after maybe another 3 or 4 or 5 years, the reduced balance and increased falls frequency causes a real problem for people living with Parkinson's disease. This is where Paripamat comes in, where we think we can reduce the falls frequency and improve balance. But then besides these motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, there's also the non-motor symptoms as well, such as cognitive impairment and apathy. And here we have 2 assets poised to enter the clinic next year to address these 2 limiting factors. Next slide, please. So mesdopetam, as mentioned earlier, the global rights have been acquired by Ipsen to forward develop and commercialize this asset. And it's specifically designed to target levodopa-induced dyskinesia, but we also see benefits with patients who have Parkinson's disease as well. Sorry, patients who have psychosis as well. Next slide, please. So with our deep and profound understanding of the neuropharmacology of Parkinson's disease, we know that dopamine receptors D1 and D2 manage and control movement. But as the disease progresses, there's an upregulation of D3 receptors, which actually leads to this inhibition. Mesdopetam inhibits the D3 receptors and thus counteracts the levodopa-induced dyskinesias. What does good look like for these patients? Well, an increase in good on time by 1 hour would be quite meaningful. There are some dirty old drugs that have some effect here, such as amantadine, and some reports suggest that they could offer 1.5 hours of good on time, but not without quite problematic side effects. In our phase 2A study with mesdopetam, we actually saw that good on time could be increased by 2.8 hours in the day. And of course, we're pleased to say that it's well tolerated and that the side effect profile is close to 0. Next slide, please. So our ongoing phase 2B study, where we recently announced has now completed recruitment, should report out top-line data at the end of the year. 154 patients have been recruited across 46 sites in Europe, America, and Israel. And it's powered so that we can detect 3 hours of good on time. The endpoint is determined by means of what's so-called Hauser diary. This is a patient-recorded outcome, and that was determined in agreement with the regulators. And this is the best way of measuring the improved good on time. Next slide, please. Mentioned previously that mesdopetam has actually been licensed by Ipsen, a French company specializing in these areas. And part of the deal there is that Ipsen will assume the ongoing clinical development and commercialization of mesdopetam, assuming that the phase 2 data is favorable. And just recently we announced that they've initiated some clinical pharmacokinetics studies to support a late stage application for continued clinical development. The terms of the transaction are quite attractive, $363 million plus royalties, and as we said, they will continue with the clinical development and commercialization. Next slide, please. Paripamat is an unencumbered asset. We retain all rights to this, currently in phase 2B, designed to improve balance and reduce falls in patients with Parkinson's disease. Next slide, please. We know that in Parkinson's, cognitive impairment, postural instability, balance and falls occurs due to a loss of noradrenaline and dopamine transmission in the cerebral cortex of the brain. Levodopa does not restore this function. Paripamat is uniquely and specially designed to increase the activity of the synapse in the cerebral cortex. Next slide, please. The development path for Paripamat is relatively straightforward, and we're making good progress. The initial safety studies have been completed. The phase 2A studies have been completed with compelling and intriguing results, and we're now in phase 2B, where we'll evaluate the effects on balance and reduced falls frequency, as well as recording improvement in other cognitive functions. Next slide, please. The phase 2A data that was reported and presented a few years ago really demonstrates quite a compelling way that Paripamat affects the Parkinson symptoms not typically benefiting from levodopa. So not tremor, not rigidity, not bradykinesia, but the postural dysfunctions saw significant improvement. What that really means in real time, in real world measurements, is that we saw a 35% improvement in balance, a 53% reduction in falls, and a 70% reduction in apathy reported by the Parkinson's patients. These are significant and meaningful observations in our phase 2A study that compelled us into the phase 2B study, which I'll show you on the next slide, please. Again, a relatively straightforward placebo-controlled blinded study evaluating two different strengths in patients who actually have a history of frequent falls. And the endpoint is quite simply a reduction in the falls frequency over a 12-week period. Next slide, please. In addition to the two assets I've just mentioned for levodopa-induced dyskinesia and balance and falls, we have a number of other assets in our pipeline, specifically at the targeting the cognitive function, apathy, and the one-a-day Parkinson's treatment. Next slide, please. So 942 is to improve cognitive function, such as memory, perception, attention, reasoning, problem solving, specifically in patients with Parkinson's disease. And 757 to address apathy, which is best described as a loss of initiative, interest, emotional expression, also in Parkinson's disease. And our 003 program, which is still in this discovery stage, is really looking to see if we can have a next generation levodopa for a one-a-day treatment for Parkinson's disease without the troublesome side effects and complications. Next slide, please. All of this is because of our unique discovery platform, ISP, an advanced systems biology platform designed to leverage machine learning skills so that we can really identify molecules with the best biological fit for the symptoms we're looking to address through phenotypic screening. It truly does discover new first-in-class compounds with very strong intellectual property rights, and also, we believe, increases our probability of success through the development phases of drug discovery and development. And this continues to be very productive. Next slide, please. So this is our pipeline. The lead program is mesdopetam licensed to Ipsen, Paripamat, and the preclinical assets still unencumbered. And you can see the stage of development here and the next milestones. A very, very rich pipeline focused on addressing the complications and symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Next slide, please. The upshot of that rich pipeline is a very, very strong news flow over the next 2 years or so. Lots of milestones related to asset development, clinical development, data reporting, etc. And of course, coupled with that, high profile at investor conferences, medical congresses, and publications. So I think because of all the activities we have ongoing, you'll see a lot of IRLAB and a lot of strong news flow over the next 2 years or more. Next slide, please. So where is IRLAB today? Well, it really is built on a very strong foundation, focused R&D on addressing the troublesome and complications of patients suffering with Parkinson's disease, and real validation of technical, clinical, and commercial opportunity with the license with Ipsen. Today, we're building for the future, taking these assets through clinical development and into late-stage development, and we retain full strategic autonomy to develop and or commercialize these assets in our pipeline, either alone or in partnership. And I think now we can start to really imagine that IRLAB is poised to be a very, very successful and valuable pharmaceutical business. Next slide, please. For more information, please revert to the analysts that have published coverage on us, and of course, revert to us on our website. Next slide, please. That's it. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Be grateful to receive any questions.
Thank you very much, Richard, for such a clear presentation. Now we have some time for a few questions. And my first question, it will be more like a broad one regarding mesdopetam. You, by the end of the year, you will report top-line data on your phase 2B trial. From then, what can we expect to happen? I mean, the whole process will depend on Ipsen, but in rough terms, what can we expect as the investors of IRLAB?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. I mean, the terms of the transaction with Ipsen is that we will continue and complete the phase 2b study in levodopa-induced dyskinesias. And yesterday we announced that we've now completed recruitment and randomization. So we can be quite optimistic that we should, the final patients should have their last visit, and we should have data towards the end of the year. Now, the forward development, of course, is an executive decision by Ipsen, and will be contingent on the data, no doubt. So we should really wait to hear that. But our collaboration with Ipsen is very strong, very close. They're as excited and enthusiastic about this as we are. And I think that's possibly symbolized best by the fact that they've recently initiated some standard pharmacokinetic and drug-drug interaction type studies just to support the possibility of initiating phase 3 studies and obviously seeking clearance from the regulators. So they're very optimistic, but of course, all of these things are contingent on data, and the risk is completely in the right place here. If the data is good, we have every confidence that Ipsen will progress this forward into late-stage development towards registration.
For your answer. And now a second question, and it might be a tricky one, accounting that you have been in your role for a little bit more than 2 months. But a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, Amneal filed for FDA approval for their formulation of extended release of levodopa-carbidopa IPX203. And they are filing for approval in Parkinson's disease, where they already saw in their clinical trial an extended good on time of 1.5 hours. How much does this data represent a threat for IRLAB in the case of a potential approval? Or since it's levodopa-carbidopa, the benefits should still be there of mesdopetam?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to sort of go back to our deep understanding of the disease. So levodopa and new formulations of levodopa have been tried over the years with varying degrees of success. But it doesn't actually address the fundamental problem that's driving the levodopa-induced dyskinesia, which is the upregulation of the D3 receptor, which is specifically what mesdopetam does. So we actually don't see that this is a threat at all. It may offer some improvement, 1.5 hours, approximately the same as what amantadine might offer. But really, we're looking to we could certainly be complementary to that, and we could certainly see that that we should be able to exceed that. So I don't think it's a real challenge for what we're seeking to do. I think it just reinforces the fact that there's a market opportunity and there's patients that really do need medicines to address this problem.
And a following question also on mesdopetam. One of the indications that you aim to target is psychosis. It's PD psychosis. Right now, the therapeutic agents for PD psychosis are very limited. You have, for example, Nuplazid, which I think that last month the FDA actually rejected the application or the approval for Alzheimer's disease psychosis. And also, Nuplazid is not associated with a good safety profile. But how big, if you could expand a little bit, how big is the opportunity of mesdopetam in psychosis?
Yeah, we think that's actually a very, very significant market opportunity, and one of the most troublesome symptoms of the disease progression. So we look to come forward with more market data and market potential at a later stage, recognizing, of course, that the progression of mesdopetam into PD psychosis would be another decision to be taken by Ipsen. But certainly in conversations with Ipsen and KOLs, they're very excited about this opportunity. And as you say, there's no really effective, safe treatment available for Parkinson's psychosis. And so we understand now, of course, that it is specifically mediated by the loss of the dopamine-producing neurons. So it's most definitely is a unique syndrome that we think we can address with mesdopetam.
Interesting. And now a next question on partnerships. it's obvious that you signed a very important deal with Ipsen for mesdopetam. Another question comes for Paripamat. What type of partnership would you like to sign for this molecule, and what type of partner are you looking for?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very good question. Appreciate that. So clearly, the partnership with Ipsen was important for many reasons. It truly does validate the fact that with our ISP discovery platform, in the opinion of Ipsen and indeed others that we were negotiating with, really do believe that we can identify truly novel molecules with unique mode of action and robust early clinical data to support onward development, and that early data will be strengthened hopefully with favourable results from our phase 2 data at the end of the year. As we know, of course, there's a lot of latent value in molecules during their development cycle. So, whilst we're always open to conversations with potential partners to collaborate and develop our assets, we're also looking to return the optimum value for our shareholders by taking these compounds as far as we possibly can. So, we haven't got a clear defined strategy of when we'd like to license and partner Paripamat. We're open to conversations, but we're also very keen to make sure that we actually release and secure the maximum value for our shareholders.
Thank you very much. One of the goals as new CEO that you stated in the Q2 report was to increase strategic, commercial and business development both in Nordics as well as internationally. Could you let us know how are you planning to achieve that?
Yes, well, I think visibility is really important. We have a unique offering, best demonstrated with the assets that we developed that are truly quite unique, and behind that is our discovery engine ISP that truly is disruptive in the way in which it allows us to identify molecules. So the way in which we pursue business development is both targeted and broad. So clearly we need profile, which we'll secure through promotion, media coverage, and presentations at conferences and such like. And also we'll look to become much more visible and present in the BD activities of the big pharma companies, and really try and position ourselves as an organization that really is developing an extremely useful and valuable pipeline of assets that will treat the Parkinson's patients during their disease journey. And I think that's probably the key message. It's a disease without a cure. It's a neurodegenerative disease where people suffer for 20 years or so, and we're addressing every significant stage along that disease journey with our assets, which we think is an extremely valuable proposition as we move these assets through the development cycle. So it's about being visible, it's about being present, and it's about representing the fact that we're developing a complete solution for people living with Parkinson's disease.
Thank you. And one last question. Could you update investors on how does your cash position look like now, and how does the future look in front of you?
Yes. Well, we had a Q2 presentation just a few weeks ago where, if I remember correctly, we had, 323 million kroner on our account, which I think that was the number, which is quite a respectable cash position. We never really give guidance on cash runway, but we certainly are in a strong position and not pinched for cash at the moment, which is rather good news as the markets are a little bit tight. But the journey is long, but we're very optimistic that we are in a very, very nice position with regards to cash and shareholder sentiment.
Richard, thank you very much for being here with us today and for your nice presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.